Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. I've been getting a lot of requests lately to cover designer study questions for paper 4. I have covered them before. In fact, many samples are available on my website. But I think the requests are increasing because mocks and prelims are coming up in January. That's why. So let's do another practice. I'll take it as a fresh topic. So I'll explain to you again step by step how to design your study. And today I'm doing it for the consumer psychology option. So in October, November, paper 4, the question which had come, I have pasted that on the screen. This is from the non-Indian subcontinent variant, that is from 4.1 and 4.3. I have taken this question. Consumer psychology option has really become popular with the new syllabus. Like earlier, we just used to get students who are taking clinical and organization. Nowadays, a lot of schools are opting for consumer, which is great because all options are really good. Okay, so from consumer psychology, let's see the question which had come. So they'd asked us to design a questionnaire with closed questions to investigate the effectiveness of multiple unit pricing on purchases from a supermarket. And the plan must have questionnaire technique details, anyways, we have to include it, and descriptive statistics. Again, anyways, we have to include that. Okay. So we know that totally the question is worth 24 marks. The 10 marks which are there only for part A. Like very often I see students refer to this as the 10 marker. Actually, it's the 24 marker. And it's very important not to lose sight of that because all questions are interconnected with each other. So the first thing that you should do for design a study question is think about part B, 1 and 2. Immediately after reading the question given in part A, you should start thinking about B1 and B2. That is something you cannot leave for later because if without consideration for part B, you design the whole part A, you will have nothing to write about in part B. So, what I mean by this is, you know that after designing the study, you will have to describe the psychological knowledge on which your plan is based. You know that B questions are fixed, they are invariable, they are definitely going to be there on the paper. These two questions with exact wording are always going to be there. So, when you know that after designing your study for 10 marks, you will have to justify it on the basis of some psychological knowledge, why not first think about which psychological knowledge you want to base your study on? Now, here they've asked you to design a study on multiple unit pricing. So, you need to think back to your syllabus, which is that part in which you have seen multiple unit pricing. So, you've seen it under sales techniques. Specifically, you've seen a study by Van Sink et al., in which there were two lab and two field experiments. In the first field experiment, they had manipulated multiple unit pricing. So, this is the psychological knowledge on which you need to base your study. Many students will argue that what is given before Van Sink study, like a general introduction to multiple unit pricing and multiple unit packaging, they feel they can base the study on that. But you know that in the very next question, they tell you that you have to use two features of the psychological knowledge to plan your study. If you just go by a definition, like you just take the definition of what multiple unit pricing is, exactly which two features are you getting in that definition on which you are going to base your study? You will have to take the Van Sink study. One thing I have seen is many students by themselves are opting for consumer or their schools are opting for consumer. But the students are not prepared to remember all the studies which are there. And by remember, I don't mean rote learn every detail of every study which is there. But basic remembering the summaries of the studies and the names of the authors who have done the studies, there's just too much resistance to that. So the moment I'll say, you need to base your study of Van Sink, students become panicky and they feel that, how will I remember that Van Sink study is there in this section? They haven't named it here and all. You will have to put in that much effort. That is what studying psychology is about. If you're not going to link it to the Vansing study, I really don't see how you're going to be able to design the study. Once you've taken consumer psychology as an option that you want to study for paper 4, you have to know all the studies which are there within it. So you have to know the name of the author of every study. It is highly preferable to mention it when you're answering part B, to refer to the Vansing study directly by naming Vansing. And definitely you have to know a summary of the study to be able to answer this question. So you'll have to remove that mental block from your mind. I'm just coming across it a lot with my students. They don't want to remember the studies. That's not an option that you have in consumer. Okay, so having said that, first thing you need to decide is that this study will have to be based on Vansing study. That also it will have to be based on two features of the Vansing study, because that is what the question demands. So now I'm telling you what you should do before actually writing the answer, like mentally what you need to think. You need to remember that particular experiment out of 4 experiments which Vansing has done, in which multiple unit pricing was manipulated. And that is the very first field experiment which Vansing had done. So just to refresh that, you must be remembering that Vansing had offered the same items in different supermarkets, either in single unit pricing options or multiple unit pricing options. They were everyday items that were on offer. And what he found was that whenever the items were pitched as multiple units, so whenever they were offered on multiple unit pricing, they would inevitably sell more than when they were offered as single unit pricing. That is the study which we are going to base off this study on. So first we need to bring that study to mind. Also, I will strongly recommend, before you start designing the study, like no doubt you have to design it step by step as per the questionnaire method. Just be clear which two features you want to incorporate from Vansing study. It'll just make your work easier. Like personally, what I would like to incorporate here is one, the SUP versus MUP manipulation which was there. Single unit pricing and multiple unit pricing. Now, by I want to incorporate the manipulation, I do not mean that I want to design an experimental study and I want to have 2 levels out of the IB. That's not what's being asked. They're asking me for a questionnaire study. So I am going to stick to a questionnaire study only. It's just that when I'm formulating my questions, I will give participants hypothetical scenarios in which they have to compare single unit pricing and multiple unit pricing. So the manipulation feature which was then Vansing, I want to use that to design my question. So that's going to be one feature. The second feature I would like to take is the use of everyday items. This study also, they want to base it off a supermarket. Vansing's study was also in a supermarket, and he had asked people, so he hadn't asked people, what he had manipulated was pricing of very everyday type of commodities like toilet rolls, paper rolls, cereal boxes. Those are few things I can remember right now. So even I would like to ask participants about these items only on my questionnaire. So that would be my second feature. Another feature is coming to my mind. So let me incorporate that also. I'm required to do 2, but just because I'm demonstrating to you how to go about it, let me take one more feature. You could take any 2 in your study. Another feature that I remember in Vansing et al., though it was not specific to the first field experiment, in other experiments which Vansing did, he also manipulated the price limits, say the, what do we call them, quantity limits of how many items consumers were allowed to purchase at a time. So limits were manipulated. He also manipulated external and internal anchors. He also manipulated whether discounts were being offered. I would like to include these features in some of the filler questions that I'm going to design for my questionnaire. Now, the main questionnaire has to be about MUP, multiple unit pricing, no doubt. Like, that's what I have to design my main questions on. But of course, I would like to include filler questions because I wouldn't like to directly tell participants what the study is about, just to prevent demand characteristics. So for that case, I'm thinking of right away that I will include some filler questions. So why not take those filler questions also from Mansing's study only, because they will be relevant to the present investigation. So these are some things coming to my mind. Your plan does not have to be exactly like mine. Like there's no definite 100% one answer only which you have to give to this type of a question. You could have some creative ideas of your own, but I just want you to see my thought process. More than what I'm writing or what my answer is, how I'm thinking about the answer, I want you to note that. So when it comes to designing my 10 marker, even before designing it, I consider all the psychological knowledge and the features. Then I start designing my 10 marker. And of course, later, whatever is there in the C part, that is something I feel we don't need to consider at the beginning. That is more based off research methods. So whatever questionnaire technique, type of questions, choice of descriptive statistics, those things I can evaluate easily after I've written the entire 10 marker also. So right now I don't need to think about it. Also, one more thing I remember when this October November paper came in for this question only specifically, somehow what has happened is students are expecting that, like we've understood, looking at the latest papers, that they're going to name some features here in 2 bullet points and then they're going to ask C questions about that only. But here you can see closed questions have to be designed. That is mentioned here within the text of the question only. And then one of the C part questions, C2, has come from there, from what they have mentioned in the stem of the question itself. I always tell you in every video, if you've been following my videos, you must be seeing that you must read the question fully and carefully before answering. Now I hope you can see why this is important. Because I remember when students answered this question, they came and told me, many of them, that they included open questions. Firstly, why would you include open questions in a questionnaire? I always insist that you should have closed questions. So why would you have open questions? That's one. Anyways, on questionnaire, there's no point of asking too many open questions. One or two is fine, but only open questions, and why not take an interview instead? Second thing is, when they've told you specifically that you must have a questionnaire with closed questions, you cannot exceed that boundary. They're telling you they want closed questions, so you have to include those. So not necessary from this, what you're learning from this example, not necessarily the feature which you are seeing in the bullet points, they'll ask the C part only from those. They can ask it from any other feature which is named in the stem of the question. So be alert about this. So when students come to me after their October, November papers and they want to reattempt in May, June, these are the type of problems I come across. Like when they discuss with me where they've gone wrong, they feel like after writing, even they realize they've gone wrong in those aspects, then these problems start coming up. So what is happening is, in your case, I don't want you to have to repeat your paper, because these students, they're coming for help after they've not been able to do well, then they come to me because they want to repeat it. Why not learn properly from the beginning only, so that you don't have to repeat your papers? Okay, so keeping all this in mind, now we can start designing the study. I will show you step by step how to design part A, and I'll write the answer as I'm designing it. I want you to be active when you're watching this video. The best approach you can take is, you also start writing your answer. Keep pausing the video in between, like write a little something, write the feature that I'm writing about. Pause the video while you're writing it. Then start the video again. See whether what you've written is matching with mine. Means it does not have to be exactly the same feature, but is it to the effect of what I'm writing or not? So are you also able to write in the same way, not the same answer, but in the same way that I'm writing? You can keep on checking. My intention is, you should not be passive while watching this video. Don't just keep on seeing what I'm doing. Make sure you are actively practicing so that you can learn from it. I'll be writing an answer, and again, I want to reiterate, this is not the only answer you can write. This is my style of writing. There are many more possibilities of how you can write. I find this is the best approach. Like this really helps students to be on track the way I'm going to write it now. It ensures that students cover every feature that is required in a questionnaire study. So I'll begin with the aim of a study. For a questionnaire study, you need to have an aim. You need not have a hypothesis. Hypotheses are applicable to experimental and correlational studies. Also, I like to write in third person. Many students have a preference for writing in first person. That all is fine. So, the aim of the present study is to investigate the effectiveness of multiple unit pricing on purchases from a supermarket. So, the aim is always directly derived from the question itself. Now, coming to some general features that we need to cover. We need to talk about the sample of the study. When it comes to consumer psychology, what is relevant? Like, so many features can be of a sample, but what are relevant features besides standard features like age and gender? Things like income level of participants, or relevant to what the question is, supermarkets, or some shopping experience that they have. If instead the questionnaire had something to do with restaurants, then dining experience which they have. These type of features can be relevant. So in consumer psychology, you can think of participants in these terms before writing exactly what features your sample is going to have. So I'll say the participants will be both males and females. Again, you want to write future tense, present tense, it's up to you. I will strongly recommend don't write in past tense because no actual study has been done. So the participants will be both males and females. There's no reason for me to include only males, only females. Like, gender is not a requirement. In fact, it's good if there are both males and females, because then there'll be good representation of how MUP affects both the genders. So in fact, I think it's ideal to have both genders in this study. Of any age above 18 years. So just avoiding having children in the study. For a total of, for a total sample size of, it's a questionnaire study, closed questions can have a large number of participants to increase generalizability. So say I would say 100 or 200 participants. I'm taking 200. They will represent various income groups, as I mentioned earlier, including working class, middle class, and upper class. They will also represent people with various shopping experiences, such as those who shop regularly as well as those who shop infrequently. To obtain a diverse sample of this nature, now I can link it to a sampling technique. I want a very diverse sample. I want to see how various types of people get affected by MUP. So the best way I think of getting such a sample is volunteer sampling. As I've mentioned in my previous videos also, I feel random sampling is something students don't cover well, so just avoid taking that. Take opportunity or volunteer sample. Now I remember again when this question came up, many students took it very literally. Like, when they've said MUP from a supermarket, they thought that it has to be one specific supermarket, and so they'll have to do opportunity sampling because they'll have to go in that particular supermarket only to do the study. That's just a way of phrasing the question. From a supermarket, they mean any supermarket. So they're talking in a generalized sense. It does not have to be from one particular supermarket. That's why I'm taking volunteer sample from my perspective of wanting a diverse sample. I want people from different locations and areas. I forgot to mention that. So I'll just add that also. Participants shopping at supermarkets of different localities will be included. So now I can say, to obtain a diverse sample of this nature, volunteer sampling will be used. As such, I can cover the questionnaire specific features later after the general features, but I feel it's relevant here. So I'm including the questionnaire format right here itself, that it's going to be an online questionnaire. I want a very diverse sample. It's going to be difficult to physically visit all types of people and get them to answer questionnaires like on paper and pen method. So I feel online is very suitable for the type of diversity that I'm looking for. So I'll mention it right here. Volunteer sampling will be used. An online questionnaire will be prepared, and the link for it will be posted on Facebook, or you could just say generally social media platforms, on Facebook groups. Now, to show how I'm getting a diverse sample from Facebook, I can mention like which type of groups on Facebook I will post the link to, so that I can get many types of people. So, on Facebook groups catering to parents from different localities, students from different areas. Also, we can say shopper groups or consumer groups, etc. So when I post my questionnaire on so many different types of groups, definitely have low income, high income parents who will answer the questionnaire. So income groups will be covered. Students, when they answer, for example, they are typically infrequent shoppers, but parents are frequent shoppers. So then I'll have people with different shopping experiences also, which I'm also intending to have in my sample. So this way, by targeting many different social groups on Facebook, I can get many types of shoppers. So that's about sample and sampling technique, but doesn't get completed here. Whenever we say we want a volunteer sample, we have to be very specific about, first of all, where we are advertising. That I've made it clear that I'm advertising on Facebook groups. But also, what am I telling participants at the time of recruiting them? When I'm asking people to volunteer, I need to give them some information about which type of a study I need participants for. So I need to mention what I'm going to tell them when I post the link. What information will be given to them along with the link? So I can say, along with the link to the survey, a message will be posted asking for volunteers to answer a questionnaire on shopping habits of consumers. As I told you in the beginning, I would not want participants to know exactly that the study is about multiple unit pricing, just because I feel that that will kind of prime them to think too carefully about multiple unit pricing instead of giving spontaneous answers, which are really genuine, or how they select products. So that's why I'm giving a very broad purpose of my study, that it's going to be about shopping habits of consumers. And within that, of course, then multiple unit pricing that does get covered. So I'm not totally misleading them. It's just that I'm not telling them the exact purpose of this study. Now, the next general feature we need to cover is ethics. Many students like to take the approach of having a separate paragraph for ethics. That's good. I like to integrate ethics where and when I feel it is relevant to the study. In my mind, when I'm designing a study, I'm just going through it stepwise. So first I need to do this, then this, then this, imagining myself to be the researcher. So as and when I feel like this is one place where this feature will be relevant, I like to put it there. So ethics I tend to put up in parts in the study. I don't put it all together. Also, like I always say, ethics have been given a lot of weightage this year in designing a study. In the mark scheme, a separate criterion is ethics. So you definitely need to cover them, and as many relevant ethics as possible for your study. When participants, you are not having personal contact with the participants, because I'm not getting them like in my presence to answer the questionnaires. So whatever ethics also I'm following, it will have to be done on that online questionnaire only. So I have to design in that way. Also, the biggest problem with all students when it comes to designing a study, and as such for all answers, is to be generic. So they will just put up a list. Confidentiality will be maintained, informed consent, right to withdraw. Do you really think that they're going to give you marks just because you can name some of the ethics which are there in the syllabus? However harsh this sounds, do you think you deserve marks just to be able to name a few ethics? Absolutely not. You want credit for talking about ethics, you please make them relevant to the study that you're designing. Relate every ethical guideline that you're taking up to this particular study. Why should anyone give you marks when within design a study question you're just going on naming one ethic after the other one ethic? It just looks like you've learned a bunch of ethics and you're just going to throw them in whichever answer comes. Of course, you're not going to get credit for such things. So make sure whatever you're writing is relevant to the study and show how it is relevant in your answer. So when participants click the link for the survey, for the questionnaire, they will be redirected to a website on the first page of which a detailed instruction will be presented about the questionnaire they have to answer. Participants, now I don't need to give in direct quotes what the instructions are, but I just need to make it clear, even if I'm saying indirectly, what all is being told to the participants before they can answer the questionnaire, and in that only I can talk about the ethics. Participants will be informed again that the study is about shopping habits. Now I should start thinking about my questionnaire and inform them at least something about how they have to answer the questionnaire before they begin. So in my mind, how I'm thinking about it is, if I have to design a questionnaire based on Vansing study, then I would like to give them some hypothetical scenarios, as I was mentioning earlier, in which I will tell them, supposing this is a product and this is the price for which one single unit of it is being offered, and this is a price for which multiple units of it are being offered. Which offer would you like to take? So I would like to keep on giving them scenario type of questions like these on the questionnaire. So those examples I'll give ahead, but right now I need to think then how do they need to answer? That I need to tell them in the instructions page. So they'll be informed again it's about shopping habits. They will be told that they have to see different shopping scenarios in the questionnaire and make choices about which product they would like to purchase by clicking on the product. Or you could also say that they would have to select an offer by clicking on the offer, something like that. Then coming to informed consent, right to withdraw. We can also tell them the duration. Typically in questionnaire study, we should just tell them how much of their time should be taken up. You know how you have to think about it is, you're the researcher. What will the participant want to know from you before they can decide do they want to participate in the study or not? What is informed consent? Just telling people there's a study, come and participate. What is the information in that? What are they consenting to? Tell them what is going to happen in the study. This is what they're required to do. This is the time that will be taken. If any conditions are there, here they are not there, but in case that they should have certain visual ability or something, they should make sure they have that. Then they can think about, from this information, do they want to participate or not? So think about what information you're giving them, let them consider it, and then you take their consent. So include such things on the instructions page. They will also be informed that the questionnaire will take about 10 minutes to complete. Their answers to the questions will be kept confidential, although they will be asked for their demographics, including their name, ages, income levels, gender, etc., before they answer the questionnaire. None of these details will be revealed in the report of the study. Only group-wise statistics will be published. They will also be informed that at any point in the study, if they do not wish to answer any questions, they can exit the web page without any consequences. This will give them a right to withdraw and assurance about their confidentiality. Then, if they are agreeable with these terms, they can click and I accept the conditions of the study. On the bottom of the instructions page to indicate their written consent or their consent. So this is how we talk about ethics. It is elaborate, it's required to be elaborate because ethics are an important consideration in getting your marks. Do not make a blank list of ethics. Like I said before, relate every ethic with this study, like I have done in this paragraph. Now let's come to questionnaire specific features. We have given all the generals which are required so far. We will be giving some ahead. Let's come to specifically what we have to indicate in questionnaire. We have to give the questionnaire technique or format which I have already given. It's online. So that is done with. Next, I need to state which type of questions I will be using. In the question given in the exam itself, they have told me to take closed questions. So I will take those only. I will just mention it explicitly so that it's clear what is the type of question that I'm taking. Also, to keep the flow going of the procedure of the study, I mentioned that they have to submit the informed consent form. Then I'll just mention once a participant clicks on the acceptance button, they will fill out their demographics on the next page. Then the questionnaire will open on their screen. One question coming up on the screen at a time, which they have to answer. In sequence. Okay, so one at a time they keep on seeing the questions and answering. Now I can indicate that there will be closed questions. Each question will be of the closed type. I would like to include fixed choice questions. That is my choice. You might want to include rating scale questions or specifically Likert type of rating scales. All that is up to you. I just want to give fixed or forced choice questions. So it will be of the closed type, specifically fixed, forced choice questions will be included. Now we know we have to give examples of questions. At least 3 examples we should give. Right now I'm not fixed on how many examples I want to give, but let me give a few. Some examples of questions include okay, so now to think about Vansing's study, like I said, they had mentioned there were paper rolls and all those type of items. So I would like to present something around that. Okay, so one question could be, would you buy a box of breakfast cereal and there can be 2 options below that. Priced at say $4 a box, or priced at $12 for 3 boxes. Okay, so this will be one question. I hope you're able to see how I'm implementing the Vansync manipulation into the question. The first option, which is they priced at $4 a box, is an SUP type of condition, single unit pricing, one box for $4. But the next option, which is there $12 for 3 boxes, that's a bundle of 3 boxes which they're getting for $12. So that means that's multiple unit pricing. Would you buy sorry, I just lost track. Yeah, would you buy toilet rolls, say priced at I'm just thinking about the prices. So let's say priced at $5 for a pack, or priced at $15 for 3 packs. You can include any currency. If you're not familiar with dollars, you can include the currency of your nation. That's fine. They're not going to deduct marks for those. Also reminds me of one thing. Many students have a misconception that forced choice questions are strictly true, false, or yes, no. Those are just uh, examples of forced choice questions. The type of questions I've put here, these are also forced choice. Basically, in any question, if you're forcing participants to choose between definite alternatives, it becomes forced choice. So let's say, would you buy frozen dinner for, let's say, priced at $6 for one meal, or $18 for 3 meals? Okay, I think 3 questions are enough because they're very similar in nature. So, it just becomes too repetitive. So, if I give 4, 5, I can give, but it's just reiterating the same thing again and again. So, I feel I can save that time to write other answers. Okay, now these are the target questions actually, which are there. These are about multiple unit pricing. Now coming to the filler questions part, which I had mentioned earlier. One thing is I'm telling the participants that the questionnaire is about shopping habits. So I need to include some other questions also. Otherwise, despite me telling them it's about shopping habits, if only MUP questions are there, becomes very obvious that MUP is what the study is about. And as we know, filler questions also help to increase validity for the same reason that demand characteristics reduce. Since participants cannot figure out what the true purpose of the study is, they are unlikely to modify their answers just to please the researcher. So if they know it's about MUP, they might feel, okay, we should select the MUP option only always. We should never select the SUP option. But because there will be too many filler questions also in between, they won't realize that the study is strictly about MUP. So they won't be able to distort the answers. Okay, as far as one more thing, 2 features of Vansing studies which I have to implement, I've implemented both those features in these questions you can see. Firstly, I have designed the alternatives for the questions in a way that one covers SUP, the other covers MUP. So that manipulation which they have done, I've implemented in my alternatives. Secondly, the nature of the items that I have included, breakfast cereal, toilet rolls, frozen dinner, these were the ones which they had included in their study as well. Everyday items which are most frequently purchased in supermarkets. So I have also taken up that feature. So you can see I've covered 2 features and I'm going to have no problem in answering parts B1 and B2. Okay, now coming to filler questions, this is an additional feature I'm taking. Like just because I want to take it, not necessarily. Means I don't need to take it from Vansync, I can take it from anywhere as such. Filler questions will also be included. So that the participants again make relevant. Whatever you say must be relevant to the context of the study. Don't give anything in general. So that the participants do not figure out or do not understand that multiple unit pricing MUP effect on shopping behavior is strictly being measured. In this way, they will not show demand characteristics, like indicating a greater preference for MUP offers just to please the researcher. This will increase the validity of the plan. You know, a compulsory general feature you have to give for any study is validity of the plan. So I feel this is a good place to link with that. Also, I need to mention the filler questions will be randomly interspersed between other questions. We can't have all the filler questions together and all the target questions together. Again, it makes it obvious to the participants what the study is about. So definitely they should be randomly put in between. And then I can say some examples of filler questions are, definitely give examples of filler questions if you're including them in a questionnaire. It helps to better understand what nature of questions you're using. So I would like to include something from quantity limits, which was done in the Vansing study. So say, would you buy a pack of sweets? Okay. No, a better how I can phrase it is, if you were allowed to buy only 10 pack of sweets at a supermarket, would you buy one packet, 5 packets, 10 packets? So this I have based off quantity limits feature, which was there in the Vansing study. Nothing to do with MUP as such, just so that a different type of question can be presented to participants. Another thing we know Vansing had done was he had manipulated external and internal anchors. Like in one of his studies, I don't remember exactly which, there was discount offers. So for that, I could include a question. If a 10% discount is available on, and I'll keep including everyday products only in all the questions so that the questions appear similar to each other. So if a 10% discount is available on paper rolls, which you do not need, would you buy them, not buy them? And final one more. As such, there's no fixed number of filler questions you need to give, but I just give 3. Let's take the internal anchor type of question. If you consume 5 packets of chips a week and are allowed to buy maximum 10 packets in the supermarket, would you buy one packet, 5 packets, 8 packets, 10 packets? Okay, right now the scope of the video is not enough for me to explain to you the internal anchor and all, but if you've done the Vansing study well, I am sure you're able to understand why I'm phrasing the questions and the alternatives in the way which I am. If you're finding it a bit too complex, you can include some general questions also as filler questions. Like, do you make discount purchases often, or if there are deadlines like stocks are going out of what do we say, clearance sales are there or stocks are going out, then do you tend to buy more? You can include those type of questions also. Filler questions basically have to be anything other than target questions, so they don't have to be relevant to the target questions at all, or they don't have to be taken from Vansing's study. As I told you, just to being able to incorporate one more feature of the study, I'm taking it, but it isn't compulsory. Just a minute. Okay, again, just an additional feature I want to include, not compulsory. I would like to say that I will be including photographs of the items, and the alternatives will be posted below the photographs. For example, let's say for this question, would you buy frozen dinner priced for $6 a meal? So there'll be a photograph of one frozen dinner. Below that, it will be written priced at $6 for one meal, and there'll be another photograph alongside where it will be written there will be a photograph of three frozen dinners, and below that it will be written priced at $18 for three meals. Just want to make it realistic. Not getting into too many details, but you know why MUP manipulation works, because of loss aversion, because of anchoring to the higher pricing which is there. People tend to prefer MUP. That's why on a questionnaire also, if you see in effect the price is the same only, still why people will take the MUP option according to Vansing, because of, like I said, loss aversion tendencies, and the higher price acting as an anchor, to which they refer the lesser product to. So because of these principles, I feel that they will be made more prominent, more realistic. Like, these principles are likely to trigger more in their mind if I can include photographs and make the question seem more realistic. And it's an online questionnaire, so I can take advantage and actually put photographs there. Again, like I said, not compulsory. I've already covered validity of the study in filler questions, but just to show you, because we are just learning after all. This is not a final answer that we are submitting. So just to show you how you can think this way and incorporate features this way. To increase the realism, also to increase, actually it's not so much about realism, to increase the effectiveness of the questions on how participants think, photographs of the items mentioned will be presented with the response choices. So, for example, a photograph of a single cereal box or three cereal boxes along with their respective pricing will be showcased. This will help participants think about their choices as they would really in a supermarket, increasing the validity of the plan. Also, to speak about the reliability of the plan, definitely the question is highly structured, which gives it reliability, like it's a standardized questionnaire. The questionnaire is entirely standardized, with every participant seeing exactly the same questions with the same response alternatives and photographs, the same filler questions in the same order, etc., increasing the reliability of the plan. Now, as I'm writing these questions in my mind, I'm going on ticking off which features need to be covered. So I forgot to mention at the beginning, but in my past videos you must have seen, you need to know exactly which are the general features you have to cover from the syllabus and which are the specific questionnaire features you need to cover. So as you're going on writing every sentence, just keep on marking in your mind that, okay, these are the general features I've covered, these are the specific features that I've covered. So that way you remain on track. So I've covered most of the questionnaire specific features, most of the general features as well. What I haven't covered yet is scoring and interpretation of the questionnaire. That's the only feature I'm left with, because I've spoken about the questionnaire format, type of questions, I've given example questions, scoring and interpretation is there. But before that, I would like to come back to ethics. As I had mentioned before, some of the ethics I like to place here and there according to where they are most relevant, in my opinion. So I definitely need to do debriefing because I've initially deceived participants. Again, I'm not going to meet them in person. So the last page that comes up can include a debriefing form. That is, after they've answered their last question, again a web page can come up in which I give them all their debriefing. I would like to talk about that first, just to conclude the procedure of the study, and then I would like to come to scoring, interpretation, and data analysis. That's my style of writing. So I would say that once a participant has answered the very last question, they will be redirected to a web page containing debriefing instructions. On this page, again make it relevant to the study. They will be informed that the purpose of the study was to check the effectiveness of MUP on purchases in a supermarket specifically. They will be told that they will be explained what MUP is, because everyone doesn't know about it. So ethically, we should let them know what it is. So they'll be explained what MUP is, which questions measured it, and which were the filler questions. After knowing the true purpose of the study, if they wish to withdraw their data, it will be written that they can do that. And a button will be given below stating withdraw data, which they could click to do so. Finally, they will be thanked on this page for their participation and informed that their contribution is valuable to consumer psychology. Okay, so this is more about how we can maintain ethics in such a study. Okay, now coming to scoring and interpretation of the questionnaire first, and then coming to general data analysis. Okay, then the scoring of the questionnaire will be done. Our interest is only in multiple unit pricing. So of course we will not be scoring the filler questions. So keeping the filler questions aside, only those questions will be scored pertaining to MUP. Now the way I have phrased those questions, just to take a look at it again, these were my MUP questions, of course just samples, not all of them. Always the second option is the MUP option. So participants who are clicking on the second option, they are the ones who are showing preference for MUP versus those who are clicking the first option. They are showing preference for SUP. So if I want to see whether MUP is effective, I need to calculate how many participants are selecting the second option, and if there are more such participants as compared to those who are selecting SUP, that means MUP is more effective for purchasing. So I just need to explain those things here to MUP. So frequencies, for scoring before frequencies, so we can say a score of 1 will be assigned automatically by the computer For all, the second response is clicked, that is the MUP responses for these questions. A score of 0 will be assigned. For all the first responses clicked, those are the SUP responses. The greater the number of MUP responses collected, that is, higher the score of a participant, because they are getting a score 1 only for MUP. For SUP, they are getting 0. So, higher the score of the participant on the questionnaire, more effective that MUP will be considered in purchases in a supermarket. So, this is how we interpret, right? This was the scoring 0 and 1. So, this was the scoring which they tell you to do for a questionnaire study. And this is the interpretation. This is how we are interpreting the scores. So now I've covered all the specific features of questionnaire. Now I can come back to the general feature of data analysis. I have to anyways give descriptive statistics. It's a requirement in the syllabus also, and it's mentioned in the question as well. So for data analysis, only quantitative, first I have to state the type of data collected. Only quantitative data is collected as indicated in the previous paragraph. I've explained the scoring there, right? So it's only in numbers. Frequencies will be calculated from the scores assigned to participants. So frequency is my descriptive statistic, and further I can convert it to percentage. See, this is not an experiment. So calculating means or medians and comparing across groups, there are no groups to compare. So the best thing is to restrict it to frequencies and percentages. So frequency will be calculated from the scores assigned to participants to check the extent to which MUP is effective. They will then be converted to percentages to get a standardized score. As we know, percentages are standardized of the effectiveness of MUP. Now, we haven't really conducted the study, so we can't say that this is the frequency or percentage which will be found. I have found it in some answers by students. Schools are saying, give some number, give some percentage of frequency. You can't really do that because you're not conducting the study. But you can give a hypothetical. So today I normally don't do this, but I'll give you a hypothetical that you can give just to give an example of how a conclusion can be drawn. As I always say, your last sentence in the 10 marker part has to be about how a conclusion the researcher will come to. So here you can't give what the result is, but you can say if this is the result, then this is what the researcher will conclude, and if that is the result, that is what the researcher will conclude. So you can put it in those terms. And if your school is insisting that you give a number, this is one way in which you can present it. So now I'm just demonstrating that. So we can say, if for example, say 65% of choices have been for MUP over SUP, then it will be considered to be moderately effective in determining consumer purchases. Let's see what is given the question, the wording. Yeah, determining consumer purchases from a supermarket. This is where percentage helps also. It's standardized, so we know it can be out of 100. So 65 out of 100 means it's quite effective because it's more than half. If instead, for example, only say 10% of choices have been for MUP over SUP, then it will be considered as a barely effective technique for influencing consumer choices. So I have given the data analysis as well. So I've ticked off all the features. In general features, I have given aim, sample, sampling technique, ethics, validity of the plan, reliability of the plan, and data analysis. In specific features, I have given questionnaire format, type of questions, example questions, scoring and interpretation of the questions. So I will reach the highest mark band, and especially because every feature I have totally contextualized it to the study. I have not given anything in general, and very importantly, I've made sure it's based on psychological knowledge that I've derived from the textbook. It's not a general study that I have planned. One more thing before I forget, many students, again in schools, it's being said you have to only include some graphical analysis. If you look at the syllabus, the only type of graphs that are available are histograms, bar graphs, scattergrams, and normal distribution, which is kind of touched upon. Mostly it's deleted from the present syllabus. Now, when it comes to a questionnaire study in which you're not drawing comparisons across conditions or groups, if you really want to force a graph onto this, maybe you can have a bar graph of, how many people made an SUP choice. So percentage on the y-axis, x-axis, 1 bar for SUP, 1 for MUP. Though I don't see any need for that. Or if instead you want to take something outside the syllabus and you want to suggest a pie chart will be drawn with one sector representing MUP, another sector representing SUP. You can do all that, but it isn't compulsory. You don't have to only include a graphical analysis. So I feel it is best avoided for studies like questionnaires in which in the syllabus only they have not suggested any relevant graph. So why include it? That's why I have not included it. I feel the study is detailed enough anyways. It's clear enough anyways. I don't really need to include a graph for any further clarity. Like it'll just be an additional thing, which is not adding anything new to my study. Okay, so that is one way in which we can design the 10 marker. If you have some different ideas, you want me to know about your ideas for confirmation, you can leave them in the comments box below. I'll take a look at them. Okay, coming to part B. For one piece of psychological knowledge. Sorry. Okay. Coming to part B. For one piece of psychological knowledge on which your plan is based, describe the knowledge and explain how you have used two features of this knowledge to plan your study. Now it's going to be easy for me to answer this because I kept it in view right at the beginning. I'll just show you how to answer because there's a lot of confusion about these questions, the B part. One piece of psychological knowledge. Why do you think they have used the wording one piece? Why have they not asked you to describe the entire psychological knowledge? Because they don't want you to give everything about MUP and everything about the Vansing study. They want you to give as much as you have used in your plan. So first they just want you to describe that section or that part of the study or theory which you have used in the plan. Just describe it as you have learnt it in the textbook. For the first part of the answer, you do not need to relate it to what you have designed. That you have to do in the second part. So for the first part, what you can do is just describe that one field experiment of Vansing study from which we have taken up MUP. Of course, you can give a little bit about the aim and all of the study, but keep in mind that it is for 4 marks only, this answer. So how much are you going to detail? It's not even worth 6 marks, unlike your paper 3 questions. So really keep it brief. That is my suggestion. Vansing, and directly start off with the study. Please name the author of the study. I know we can debate about do we need to remember the name of the author. Why I insist you remember the name of the author is, though they have named the studies in the syllabus, they themselves have named, they have presented it as if you want, you can take the Vansing study or you can take any other study for MUP. Of course, everyone is going to take the Vansing study. But because in the syllabus they have kept it this way that you can take any other study also, you are expected to name the study then. Because how do they know? Did you take Vansing, which they have suggested, or are you talking about some other study? So please name the researchers of the study and then talk about it. So Vansing et al. Conducted several experiments This I'm just giving a broad aim of their study or their number of experiments which were there to investigate the effectiveness of various, we can say, sales strategies on consumer purchases. In their first field experiment, they tested the effectiveness of MUP. Once I've mentioned what MUP is, then I'm going on using the abbreviation. Now I need to describe what was done in this study. Don't have to be very specific, like there were 86 shops and all. Don't need to remember exact figures, but be able to give the procedure, results, and conclusion. That's all you need to include. Several, we can say, supermarkets. They've said shops, but it's understood it's supermarkets. So several supermarkets were randomly allocated to sell products, similar everyday products. Very important to mention everyday products, because then this is the feature which I've used in the study. So in part 2, I'm going to talk about this, so better I mention it in part 1. So similar everyday products like toilet rolls, paper rolls, frozen dinners, sweet packets, etc. Um, with either SUP or MUP offers. The researchers, see, when you have to summarize, many students will tell me, but when we have to summarize a procedure, exactly what do we have to include and what we have to exclude? If it's an experiment, at the minimum, you mention what is their manipulation. So I've mentioned that, and of course, what they have measured. Many students don't say only what is the DV or what did the researchers measure. If you're giving the procedure as brief as possible, minimum have the manipulation and the what was measured in the study. So the researchers measured the sales of these goods, right? That's how they're coming to know about effectiveness. So we need to mention this. So they measured the sales of the goods uh, weekly sales they had calculated across different supermarkets. So basically, when you are summarizing a procedure as brief as possible, you're giving manipulation, measurement, and you're excluding unnecessary details like control, standardization, which are additional features, which are more to give credibility to the study. They are not the basics. They are not the basic like what was done in the study. So you can exclude those. Results showed that there was a significant increase in the sales of products when they were offered in MUP rather than SUP. This indicated, so now I'm giving the conclusion that offering products in bulk, we can say, or in increased numbers, whatever you call it, offering products in bulk so it makes it appear to consumers that they are making a more effective purchase than buying those products singly. Always remember that a result is specifically what was found in the study, so it's strictly about sales because that is what they were measuring. But conclusion is the larger theoretical generalization. Why have they done this study? To see whether MUP is effective over SUP. So conclusion will have to talk about that. Does MUP really work? Yes, it works. MUP is about bulk selling and it works over single selling. Why it must be working? Because they must be thinking that purchase is more effective. So that's all we need to mention in conclusion. So you can see for 4 marks, this is all I need to write. There is so much in Vansing study. We know in other, uh, manipulations of the study, like other experiments, replications which they have done. They have manipulated internal anchors, external anchors. Those things I am not including because firstly, it's only about MUP that the question is. Secondly, MUP is what I want to link to my design study. Okay, now I had also included the filler questions feature, and I said if you want to link it, you can. In case you are planning to link it, I'm not planning to link it right now. In that case, in this first part, also just talk very briefly in 1-2 lines about other studies, other experiments done by Vansing, and mention that in those experiments, price limits, quantity limits, internal anchors were manipulated. Because then in the second part, when you say that is one feature which I have used in my study, you can relate it to what you've written in part A. Right now, I'm not linking it to part 1, so that's why I'm not talking about what was done in other experiments. When it comes to a question like, give 2 features of the psychological knowledge on which you base the study, please use signposting and all and make it very clear where you're talking about which feature. Many answers suffer from being very muddled. So the examiner, like as an examiner, we just have to read the question and we can't figure out what the student is trying to talk about. So please don't write answers like that. Straight off write one feature like this. Begin your answer this way. One feature of Vansing study. With psychological knowledge, I've used Vansing study. So one feature of Vansing study was that manipulation was done of the offer of products as MUP or SUP offerings in the first field experiment. Now, explicitly, you have to link to your study and show where you have used this manipulation in your study. You can't say, I have used this in my study and move to the next feature. Where have you used it? Exactly where, point it out. So, how you have to point it out is in the design study, the target questions relating to MUP always had 2 options. The first one presenting an SUP offer, and the second one presenting an MUP offer. Okay, so that is how exactly I've used it. So that is what I need to mention. Second feature of Vansing study was the use of everyday products. Like again, I can name a few of them. To execute the MUP SUP manipulation. In the design study, the questions were also phrased around these items and their photographs were included in the response choices. That's all I need to write. Like I don't need to justify why I have selected these features only. They've just asked me that I need to relate. They've not said justify why you have taken the feature. So I've just pointed out, okay, these are the 2 features I have linked. I'll upload this answer on my website and I'll link it in the description box and pin comment below. I'll upload it as a PDF. You can use it for later reference. But I'd like to remind you, I strongly discourage passive studying. I strongly discourage just downloading PDFs and keeping them aside and reading them one day before the paper. That will not help you answer the questions. So if you want to download this for reference, please use it in the right spirit. Use it to learn from it. Don't use it to imitate it or to use it as a last minute reference. That is not the intention with which I'm uploading this answer. Okay, quickly let's cover the C part also, which is going to test basically our application of research methods evaluation. They've asked us for one reason for the choice of questionnaire technique. Then they've asked us for one weakness of using closed questions and one reason for choice of descriptive statistics. So now I will cover all these questions. One reason for choice of questionnaire technique. Okay, they're not asking question technique. Many students will answer this question with why they've chosen closed questions. They're not asking which type of question is used. They are asking which technique of questionnaire is used. They're asking me about the online questionnaire technique. Right? You may have chosen paper pen instead, you may have chosen postal instead. So your answer has to be according to the one you have chosen. When they ask the reason for choice of something, it's an indirect way of asking what is the strength of that. That is what they want to know. So one reason for selecting, actually I made it quite obvious in the beginning, but here I can put it very directly. Online questionnaire technique was to get a diverse representation of shoppers, including, for example, students who shop infrequently and parents who shop frequently, as also those of various ages, genders, income levels in the study. This would help investigate the effectiveness of MUP in increasing sales at supermarkets for various types of consumers. An online questionnaire facilitates reaching out to so many different types of customers, giving good generalizability to the results regarding MUP. Have I contextualized the answer? Yes. Have I written a generic answer? Overall, online questionnaires are good because they reach out to a lot of people without talking about my study at all? No. So that is how I will score. Next is one weakness of using closed questions. Now that asking about closed questions, we know they do not provide us context. So closed questions will not provide context for consumers' preferences. They will help understand, for example, that many people have preferred MUP over SUP. However, why they have made this preference will not be clear. What is more attractive to them about MUP as compared to SUP in terms of pricing, being able to buy several things at a time and save shopping effort, etc. In some of the reasons which you've seen for why people prefer MUP, you could give those as examples. Will not be discovered as they would not be able to explain their reasoning on closed questions. Finally, they have asked, explain one reason for your choice of descriptive statistics. I've selected frequencies and percentages. So frequencies and percentages have been selected. Why I have selected that? Either I can say in terms of objectivity, helps me to do an unbiased interpretation, or I can relate it to the questionnaire technique. So I can say I've been selected to test objectively. In fact, I'll relate it to both. The effectiveness of MUP in customer purchases an unbiased interpretation of how effective the technique is can be performed by simply looking at how high or how low the percentage of selection of MUP offers is, increasing validity of findings, right? If I do an unbiased interpretation, I will have more valid findings. So that is the strength. I hope this answer has helped you understand how to write a designer study answer, specifically a questionnaire one, specifically a consumer psychology one. I hope all those things are clear to you. I'd like to repeat, my intention has been to uh, show you how to write dance, how to think about it, what all to cover, and how to phrase, how to organize, how to go in a sequence or a flow. That has been my intention, and how to meet all the requirements of the question as well as the mark scheme. So I've tried to cover as much as possible. If you have any feedback, suggestions, what you'd like to see next, please leave in the comments box below. If you contact me personally for any interaction regarding this video, I will not answer. My personal contact details are only if you want tuition from me for psychology, you want guidance, only for that. Anything related to the video, if you want answers, you will have to post in the comments box below. Now, for all of you who are just watching this video to learn about designing a study, I would like to say goodbye and thank you for watching. There's a little brief discussion, very short, that I want to do about tuitions at the end of this video, because this is my way of interacting with you. So only those who want to hear about it can continue watching. Recently, a lot of students are coming and telling me things like everyone studies on their own and no one takes tuition for A levels. Even I tutor IB, AQA A levels and all. No one takes tuition for those subjects, especially for psychology. No one takes tuition. So I want to talk something about that, which is not directly related to the study we've designed. I just want to address some hesitations that students are having about taking guidance or private tuition. First thing, it's definitely a big myth that students do not take tuitions for A levels, IB, or psychology. The very fact that I and other tutors have many, many students whom we are tutoring throughout the year just goes to show that many, many students are taking tuition. When you go to online forums like Reddit, Discord, I know many of my students are active there. People like to portray an image. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm not making a value judgment. They like to portray to you that they're doing things independently. You do not know them personally. You do not know whether they are taking tuition or not. A lot of my students take tuition and they tell me very honestly, they tell me on the face that they don't tell anyone that they're taking tuition from me. So perhaps you're coming across such people online who are not telling you the truth. I'm not doubting everybody online, but there might be quite a few of them, because given the reality of how many people we tutors are guiding and comparing that to statements like nobody is taking tuition, that goes to show definitely at least some of them are lying to you. Secondly, regardless of someone else is taking tuition or not, there's nothing bad about taking tuition. If you need more help for your work, first of all, trust me, many people are taking tuition. Secondly, if you are the one who needs personalized guidance, your friends don't, that doesn't make you weaker or lesser than them. Also, myths around, taking tuition is bad, what else you will get to learn in tuition, which you're not getting to learn in the class already, or what is not available on online resources. I'll tell you what you get when you come for individual tuition. You get customized study plans. The tutor looks at what is your ability, where you need to be pushed further, and they tailor make the lessons according to what you need. So that's what I do for every student that I have. I teach them at their level. I take them in the direction that they need to go, not where generally students need to go. When someone is posting lessons online, for example, even I'm posting this video online, I'm giving you a general answer which should be helpful to most students. I'm not able to give you an answer which you need, which you specifically need, because I don't even know you, the viewer who's watching me. Only when you come to me for personal tuition, I'll be able to give you a customized study plan, Not only in the class, I'll teach you according to your ability. I will also direct you how to do your self study. I will give you strategies to study on your own according to your level, what suits you. For example, I'll give you an example. Some students need uh, ready made answers more or less so that they can just directly learn from them, whereas other students like to prepare their own answers and they can learn best only if they write on their own, which is ideally what most should do. But some students are particularly weak in the subject, so they need a lot of hand holding compared to others who like to write on their own. So tutor assesses this and helps you accordingly. That's one thing. Another thing is you get customized feedback, which is key, which is the most important thing about tuition, according to me. You write your answers, you give to the tutor analyzes them, tells you where your weaknesses are, how to improve on those weaknesses. That is something you can never get from online resources or documents which are available or your class teachers, because I know some class teachers are very hardworking, but we come across very few of them. Most of them are either not that interested, to be honest, or they are too busy, they have too much workload, they cannot look after so many students who are there in their class, so they are not able to give you customized feedback. They might score your answer sheets, but trust me, all the students I have come across till now, they all tell me that they have never got detailed comments from their teachers, and even if they've got those comments, they have never been given exact tips how to improve from the teacher, because the teacher is not able to do that practically in class. Very few fortunate students must be there out there who are getting from their class teachers only personalized feedback and hand holding for improving every type of answer. All students are not getting that. So you need a private tutor to be able to help you with those things. That is invaluable. So when it comes to specially, like, people are saying they don't take tuitions for A levels and IB, especially for A levels and IB over state boards, you need this type of help. That is the irony. When it comes to state boards, answers are pretty easy. They are mostly descriptive. You don't have to do critical thinking. You don't have to apply to scenarios. Things are changing, but traditionally that is how state boards have been. So in fact, once if someone tells me, for the state boards, they don't need tutoring, I understand. But for A levels and IB, you don't need. I'm amazed to hear that. So don't go by myths, misconceptions, rumors that are being spread around. And regardless of whether others are taking help or not, if you need help, you please take it. Think about what is better, failing the exam and regretting it and later having to take help anyways, or right now making a wise choice about taking help. So think carefully for yourself, and if you need help for psychology, if you come to the decision that you need individualized coaching, my WhatsApp contact number and email ID is available below. I tutor students from across the globe. So no matter which nation you are from, you can contact me for tuition. Other details I'll give you once you contact me. Okay, so that is just something I wanted to address because I was coming across it a lot nowadays. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for watching this video. My intention is to upload designer study answers from other options as well. It's just that I remain quite busy in my classes, so I'm not able to upload videos frequently. But I'll try my best to upload them soon. And if there's anything else you want to watch, you can suggest in the comments box below. I will take a serious look of what you have suggested. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.